The crucial role of Black people as educators, strategists, fundraisers, and advocates plays a huge role in ensuring that Black minds flourish. In this episode, I talk with Dr. Karida Brown, a sociologist, professor, oral historian, and public intellectual whose research centers on the fullness of Black life. Dr. Brown's latest publication, The Battle for the Black Mind, offers an explosive historical account of the century-long struggle for Black educational justice in America, revealing how early segregated systems laid the groundwork for present-day inequities. The book doesn't just focus on oppression. It highlights the enduring fight by Black communities to foster thriving educational environments and concludes with a powerful call to action for the continued empowerment of Black minds. We also chat about what creative works are occupying her time, what brings her joy, and what she hopes readers take away from her latest publication. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
I am excited for our conversation today. So, for our listeners, just kind of give us a high-level overview of who you are and how you became the People's Professor.
Hi to everybody out there. I am Dr. Karida Brown, the People's Professor, bringing sociology to the streets. My journey into academia has been nonlinear and a long time coming. So I am the child of working class parents who hail from Appalachia, African American family, who raised my brother and I in Long Island, New York, to give us a better opportunity. I mentioned my parents' origin story because that informs how I show up in my work. When I come into these elite academic spaces, I think a lot about my very first teachers. And those were my parents who grew up in the Jim Crow South, who, had what they needed, but not what they wanted, and were a part of that generation of firsts, including the first to desegregate the American school system. And I think a lot about, my journey becoming, earning my PhD, becoming a professor, teaching at elite colleges and universities like UCLA and Emory University, understanding that my own parents, who thank God are still alive, would not have even been able to apply to the very institutions that I teach at. And for that reason, that's why I call myself the People's Professor. That's why I be out in these streets, because, education is for everybody. It should be accessible, democratized. And when those of us, Marquita, myself, others who have, like my daddy likes to say, when you reach the top, send the elevator back down. And that's how I activate and show up in my scholarly practice.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. Have you, and I'm sure you have in previous publications, but I guess your history sort of informs how you wound up in the field of sociology overall. But can you talk a little bit more about how you wound up in that field, and specifically what drew you to the study of race, education, and social inequalities?
Sure. So believe it or not, Marquita, my undergrad degree is in risk management and insurance. That's a
Wow.
degree from a business school. Academia is my second career. I started off working for international corporate insurance companies like AIG that took the
Mm,
$85 billion bailout from the US government during the global financial crisis. I worked on Wall Street for the first 6 years of my career. And that financial crisis really shook me to my core, understanding that the very institutions and industries that I was a part of were not only complicit in the global financial crisis, but were the arbiters. Okay. And unlike most of my colleagues who were, I hate to say it, but like pretty thrilled about it because they knew they were about to make a ton of money, as a Black woman, I knew that it was going to be people like me and my parents and my community that were going to be acutely affected by this. And I guess that's when like was my first sociological awakening, where I kind of
Mm,
connected the dots with the systemic analysis of how I, as an individual, my actions play up into like bigger systems and structures that create inequitable outcomes for people. And I quit that day, September 15th, 2008, and quit my job without a job, left my career. That was wild, but it gave me an opportunity to ask myself, like, well, Karida, what do you want to be when you grow up? Since you blew your career up. And I always valued education. I got so much from my professors at my undergrad institution at Temple University. But Marquita, I never had a Black professor. And
mhm.
during that time, I thought a lot about, with all that I got from my educational experience, what did I miss out on? And what did I so desperately need as a young Black woman coming of age? And I said, well, I'm going to go get my PhD. I'm going to become a professor, and I'm going to be that Black professor that little Karida needed and wanted. Um, and that started my journey. And I chose sociology because, to be quite honest, you get a degree in risk management and insurance, you only get to really do and think about one thing. And I wanted a discipline that was broad enough that I could never get bored of it. And sociology gave me that. Like, you can, as long as two people are in the room, it's sociological. And you can study organizations, you can study racism, you can study economics, politics, education. Nothing's off the table with sociology. And that excited me. So I landed right where I needed to be with that discipline.
That's awesome. Listening to you kind of say that you, I don't want to say stumbled into this field, but like you had no intention of getting into it. It's
Never
very
took a
reminiscent.
sociology class before.
That's wild. Because it's such, as you mentioned, it's such a broad field to get into. So I guess if you had to pick something that was just like, well, might as well, like it's the perfect sort of area to do that. But what's interesting is that um, out of all the interviews and people that I've just kind of talked to casually that are in sort of this research, archival, librarian, academia sphere, the majority of people that I've talked to had a similar thing. So they didn't start out like, yes, I'm 100% going to be a librarian. I'm 100% going to be an archivist. They had some, I didn't start out wanting to be a librarian either. I worked, no, I didn't even know library school was a thing until I met my mentor. Um, and he was like, yeah, you should go to library school. And that just kind of sent me down the path of that. So that's very interesting. I need to explore that because it's come up so often and it's always been like lurking. Like, why do people like how do they find themselves and transition into these things? Like, what are the stories behind that? And it's always very different each time I talk to someone.
Yeah, that is super interesting. And shout out to mentors. I will shout out my mentors, Jodine Urban, who was my mentor in the insurance industry, and Dr. Ramin Sedahi, who was a professor of mine during my master's program, who wrote my letters to get into my PhD program. But yeah, I mean, that pathway for how we get to our, big person profession is interesting. But I find, Marquita, that especially those of us who have that like nonlinear pathway, all of those experiences are necessary and like accumulate into like us being able to step into our purpose. So I needed my Wall Street experience. I needed my underwriter, analytical cap. I needed the failures, successes, and blowups to be able to like, I bring all of that to the table today. And you might not see it front and center in my scholarship, but nonetheless, you better believe like it's there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of successes, it's a very nice segue. Let's talk a bit about your most recent publication, The Battle for the Black Mind. Can you give our listeners just, a high-level overview of what the book is about?
The Battle for the Black Mind is a history of Black education from emancipation to Brown versus Board of Education. And it's a book that tells that story through a few lenses. Number one, it's a story about power. What happens when a government abandons a swath of its population? In this case, African Americans. What also happens when billionaires, through their philanthropic organizations, swoop in and try to control and privatize that education? In this instance, Black education. So that's the story of power, but it's also a story about um, resilience, the long Black freedom struggle, and how education has always been a cornerstone of Black freedom dreams. And I tell that through the stories of the many, many Black educators, especially Black women who built their own schools, were institution builders who set curricula to nourish Black minds and Black children head, hand, and heart. So it is a story of striving, resilience, empowerment, and one that I didn't expect, Marquita, to be so timely because I didn't know. This book took 8 years of research. I did not know that it would be published right as this government is attempting to not only tear down our Department of Education, but our entire knowledge infrastructure in this country. So it's a playbook and a call to action in addition to being a history.
It it is, as you mentioned, so timely and so important. You talk a little bit about some conflicting philosophies of education, specifically for Black Americans post Civil War. So, how do these, tensions and the notable figures involved, right, within those tensions, manifest into, I guess, contemporary Black education and then like intellectual, development debates that you've seen throughout, I guess, discourse around this specific topic?
The battle for the Black mind is and has always been an ideological battle. And what I mean by that is it's been a battle over what kind of education Black people should be able to access. And that's a bigger question than it might seem like on its face, because education does way more than just give us our reading, writing, and arithmetic, okay? It shapes your character. It also socializes you as a citizen. So this question of what Black education should be is really about a question about who are Black Americans to these United States? Are they going to be equal citizens, or should they have a second class status that the school should cater to socialize? And we saw this battleground emerge right after the Civil War. And let me just, for those listening in the audience, just give you a little reminder. After the Civil War, it's important to remember that in the South, there were no public schools for Black or white children, none. So the idea of universal public education as a basic right for all American citizens did not exist. So you have this clean slate, okay? This is why it was a battlefield, because it was a blank canvas to imagine a new America. And unfortunately, the powers that be chose a separate and unequal school system from the start. So that's where we have those seeds of inequity. But it flourished in different ways. And the main tension that I show in the book this ideological battle was this tension between industrial education, and you mentioned notable figures. We can talk about those in the interview if you want, but industrial education that really situated itself on the idea that Black education should be grounded in a curricula that focused on agriculture, farming, domestic service for women, and teaching that to the ability to teach that to Black children. I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot like what Black people were doing for free for over 250 years in this country.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of that battle, you had this push for a liberal education, which looks a lot like a liberal arts education that we would see today. And you had folks on both sides of this argument and some in between that were fighting to define the whole Black education system around one of these curricula. You asked about how this connects to today. This battle is still ongoing. I don't know about you, but I hear more now than ever this rhetoric suggesting to Black youth that, oh, college isn't for everybody, just go to trade school, this and that. And you wonder, you know, first of all, whose script is that? Okay. Who benefits from that? And is that the same advice you're giving to your kids? And I'm not saying that anything's wrong with blue collar work. My daddy was a garbage man. He put us through college and did everything that we needed to do. So it's not that, but it's the tracking of Black minds into specific um, um, professions and rungs of society that puts them in their place. So we're still seeing the tensions of this battle, not only in a broader national conversation, but within our own communities as well. And these questions are important because, again, education and the school system is really about defining for the next generation, what does it mean to be a citizen in this country and who are we going to be?
Yeah, as a parent, um, to a child who exhibits, is an arts-driven child. So everything is art. Everything is a doodle or a drawing or something, and I want to encourage that as a parent to explore, and to allow my child to be free to explore those things. But I can see it not being a hindrance, but sort of something that isn't touted as much in formal education right now. I worked as a school librarian for what was called an arts integrated middle school, but was very clear that they had no idea how to actually integrate the arts. And when the creative and artistic people, myself, music teachers, the art teachers, right, tried to explain that to them, we were kind of shut down. And so I'm wondering how this book can be used, as you've mentioned, that it is a guidebook, but specifically like Black communities continuously fighting for environments where Black minds can thrive. Um, what do you see as one of, or more than one, the powerful and enduring strategies Black people can implement, to one, protect, right, intellectual freedom, but also advance their intellectual freedom as well?
One of the biggest takeaways that I got from researching this book, something that I learned about us, is about the heterogeneity of Black political thought. That Black people, we don't all think the same. We don't all show up the same. We have perhaps the same destination for our freedom dreams, but the pathway to get there has always been varied and nuanced, and that is a good thing. It is, there's a way in which the media, white America, um, um, the powers that be try to flatten Blackness and put us in a box and make us be one thing. We can maybe get 1, 2, 3 stereotypes and that's it. But that's never been who we were then. And it's certainly not who we are now. So as somebody who is married to American, Black American fine artist who has only been an artist his entire life. Okay. This question means a lot to me. And what I can say is, you know, back to this heterogeneity of Black political thought that expresses itself through education. Um, we have a tradition of various forms of education, that we have institutions that we've created for our kids to be able to flourish and come into whoever they were going to be. I'll give you some examples from the book, if that's okay. We have, for example, Mary McLeod Bethune, who founds the Daytona Industrial School for Negro Girls in Daytona, Florida. This is a private school that she founds originally just for Black girls, because she understands that left to the state, Black girls were going to be the ones to, fall through the cracks the most, to not have any safety net and end up cooking and cleaning in some white woman's house. That was going to be her pathway. So she built an institution around her freedom dreams for the education of Black girls, but her school mantra, the curricula, was all designed around leadership. And if you know anything about Mary McLeod Bethune, that's what she embodied in her own life. She designed a school that carried that ethos. Now we know this, the school then grows out to be co-educational. It's now a standing university, Bethune-Cookman College, but that's just one example. Whereas we have Charlotte Hawkins Brown, who starts a school in Greensboro, North Carolina, around the same time as Mary McLeod Bethune. Her school, she decides she's bad and bougie. She decides she wants to start a Black finishing school for America's Black elite. And this was a boarding school where upper class African Americans would send their sons and daughters to be trained for society, to step into their roles as the Black elite. These are wildly different visions for what their schools are up to and doing. And there were hundreds of examples, so many that I couldn't even touch on all of them in the book, that showcase, yes, we had institutions that cultivated our artists, our scientists, our uh, literary and creative geniuses. We had it all: beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, and we did not wait for permission from the state to give us what we needed. We had a way of cultivating and organizing and institution building that could sustain all of our freedom dreams. That's something that I ask myself a lot about, Marquita, today. Do we have the infrastructure to do that again, to pick up that from that tradition and make sure that our kids today also have those varied and heterogeneous opportunities?
That is a powerful question. And I don't know if there is one inherent correct answer for it. The ability to do that, yes. All the bells and whistles, nuts and bolts to put it together, iffy at best. Which again is why, your particular field of or the field of sociology is so interesting and vast, because there's always something to dive into and explore, and there's always going to be a question that comes up, no matter, you think you've solved one question, you're like, yeah, we're good with this, and then here come 50 more that now you have to dig and dive into.
And
and
there's
that,
something from a sociological standpoint, we can look at what's different about these two epochs of time. So during Jim Crow, for all of the oppression, being stripped of our rights, being cordoned off into the bottom rung of the social and economic order in this country, what we did have was this forced unity, forced community. And through that, we built intentional Black businesses, communities, and institutions. I keep going back to this institution conversation because it's so very important. And because of that, our power was concentrated in a way that we didn't really have to uh, do much to figure out, like, do our asset mapping. Who's the hairdresser? Who's the nurse? Who's gonna be leading the prayer session? Who are the teachers? Who are
Mm-hmm.
the artists? Who are the those were all kind of baked into the cake of the community. Now, in this post Jim Crow era, we have our broader rights, right? Um, but we're dispersed. The African American Great Migration happened, so we're all over the country. We have more resources than we've ever had, material resources, right? More degrees than we've ever had. However, that decentralization is something that we're still grappling with. How do we continue to power build and institution build when we're not as concentrated as we necessarily were in the past? And these questions loom large today and we're going to have to grapple with them in a more, in my view, boots on the ground way, if we're going to weather the storm of this long, cold winter that is upon us now.
And that, like that whole statement that you just did, just kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you're familiar or have seen it, but the Hillman Talk saga that took place. Um, it was something that started so pure and could have been amazing, to the point that, like, I was even tagged in it at one point. And it just, I don't even know what the where the downfall was. Like, it got to be too much. And I think that's a telling thing of our community sometimes, where we start out with good intentions, and are mission driven and focused, and then somehow it just kind of disintegrates and it becomes a thing of the past. And now, for someone like me who was very much interested in it, not necessarily to be a part of it, but to learn from it. I am a lifelong learner. Like, I will never stop fighting to learn something new each and every day. Like, that's a personal goal of mine. Um, but it made me sad, because I was like, it started so beautiful and so pure, and now there's barely a whisper of it anywhere. And that happens so often in our community that it's become, sadly, the norm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm deep in these TikTok streets too. So I saw the rise and fall of Hillman Top as well. And that's exactly it, what we're talking about. In 1896, a group of Black women founded the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. I talk about this in the book, a chapter called Lifting as We Climb. That was the motto for this organization, the NACWC. Still exists today. This organization was founded, why? Because so many Black women leaders in their local communities recognized that we needed a national body to drive the collective interest of Black women and girls at the federal level. So what it did, this was one of the first federated Black organizations in United States history, founded by Black women. Who was part of the founding women? Mary Church Terrell, Mary McLeod Bethune, Charlotte Hawkins Brown, Harriet Tubman. Okay, you have women who, Ida B. Wells, women who in their own right are leading their organizations in their area of expertise, but recognized that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That was an ethos that we had, and we didn't just believe it or say it. We then built organizations around it and used those collective power building institutions to drive change and also to create safety nets for our entire community. So when the system failed us, when the government abandoned us, when the philanthropy dollars weren't going to come through, we had it, okay, through these and these, I want to be clear, like this example that I'm giving of the NACW, it wasn't like the individual organizations weren't still doing their own thing. They were. But when it came time to it, they knew each of us needs all of us, and we've got to lock in. And I keep bringing up these stories from the past because we have the muscle memory for this. We've just gotten, I think, a little too far away from that in this whole world of everybody got an LLC, everybody a boss, everybody got their own nonprofit.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense? Am I ringing a bell here?
Ding, ding, ding.
So with that, ego gets in the way, but also, we're all supposedly competing for the same resources, the same attention, the same likes, the same whatever, in a space. And that is anti-Black.
Yeah.
That is not a part of our blueprint for our freedom dreams. And I'm not saying that in the abstract. The archival record tells us that.
Wow. That is an element of, as your book is aptly titled, the ongoing battle for the Black mind. Beyond the historical analysis, you mentioned earlier that the book is an empowering call to action. If you can name just one, what is the most important message you hope readers take with them? And how do you envision that message inspiring change?
Small axe fall big tree. That's a Jamaican saying that reminds us that it is rarely the big one fell swoop action that brings us the change or safety or thriving that we want to see. No, it's often the 1,001 little things that we do on a daily basis to bring about that change. We do democracy on a daily basis. It is a verb. Small acts fall big tree. So when I think about that today, I think about the Center for Black Education Research that is putting together curricula, Black Studies curricula for the New York City. I think about the work that, we have a retired Black academic in Florida. I recently read an article about who was just sick of what the state of Florida is doing to whitewash the curricula. So he posts on his Facebook page and says, hey, from now on, every Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I'm going to be under this tree in my community teaching Black history. Anybody who wants to come is welcome. Well, guess what? The first Saturday, 40 people came out, Black, white, and otherwise. Okay. And he's just continued to do that. Whether one person comes or 2,000 people come, he's going to be there. That's his small acts. We all have something that we can bring to the pot, right? And I just want to remind us how much power we have. It's power to the people, not power to the people in power. But if you don't believe that or put that in action on a daily basis, you're ceding your power. I learned that from the Black women in this book. That's what they taught me.
Um, we could talk about this book for I don't even days, weeks, months, years, and I hope that it is a lingering thing. But because I know my listeners, we we've delved into some heavy subject matter. So I always kind of like to end on a brighter note, if you will. So when you're not engaged in your academic work, what are some of your personal interests or hard hobbies that allow you to kind of unwind and recharge and relax?
Mm. Well, I love Black art. I've been an art collector for going on 10 years now. You can see my piece behind you. Y'all on the podcast can't see it, but Black art just brings me joy. So catching a gallery show or artist talk whenever I can is something that just um, feeds my soul, makes me bigger. I have pugs. I'm a big pug mom, and I love my dogs. And right now, I'm on Martha's Vineyard for the summer. This is my safe place, my sanctuary, the place where I recharge, reconnect with nature, and I sit still. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm content, Marquita. So I find joy in the little things, and just sitting in gratitude is something that is a part of my praxis. So I appreciate you asking and giving me an opportunity to reflect on that.
Yeah.
So I'm here in
I-
Martha's Vineyard with my pugs and my art.
And you'll be there the whole summer? Or
The whole summer. In fact, I will be giving 2 book talks this summer. One at the June Jubilee Festival, which is this weekend. It is a wonderful all weekend long event to celebrate Juneteenth. And shout out to Kahina, who owns Jubilee and the Inkwell Inn here on Martha's Vineyard for spearheading that. It allows us Black Americans an opportunity to reframe the Juneteenth holiday to something that's just so meaningful and full of activity, remembrance, and all of that. So I'll be giving a book talk there, and also at the Martha's Vineyard Black Book Festival on August 9th. So come, if you're on island, come join me for those. But it's just a great opportunity to share this message with my own community in a place that I love.
what books or let's see, what books, articles, films, or other cultural works are currently occupying your time? I won't ask you like what's your like favorite book to read. My very first interview for this podcast was Tracy D. Hall. And so she said that she has a lot of things that occupy her time, which they're not necessarily her favorite. So that's how I phrase the question now. So what's occupying your time currently?
So right now I'm working on 2 books. One is a biography of Shirley Graham Du Bois, who is Du Bois's second wife, whose FBI file exceeds his by 300 pages. So I'm reading up a lot on her. And also I'm working on a book project on the origins of the transatlantic slave trade starting in Portugal in the early 1400s. So I say that to say, rarely do I get to read for pleasure, but right now on my list, I mean, it just came in the mail too. I got Joy Goddess by Alili.
Mm.
And when I tell you, I cannot wait to revel in this book. Just the title alone, Alelia Bundles is Madam C.J. Walker's granddaughter. This book is about Madam C.J. Walker's daughter, who I love her stories about her grand parties during the Harlem Renaissance. So I can't wait to dive into this book and feel like I am there.
Cool. What is something that has surprised you about yourself?
That I'm a scholar. Oh my God, Marquita, I'm a scholar. I'm an author, an intellectual, a professor. Me, this little Black girl from Long Island, New York, who was average at best in my early days in school, to think that the ancestors had a vision for me, that I would be here telling our stories through the archives, um, making sure that we sankofa our collective power, memories, the names of our people, putting that in context, making sure that we never fall out of the historical record. And that is not only my profession, it's my purpose. And I get to do that. That surprises me every single day. Every
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of answers my next question, which is what's something you will always be proud of?
My scholarship. When I'm long after I'm gone from this physical form, my scholarship will stand, and I sit in integrity with my work. I have told the truth. So Battle for the Black Mind is my 6th book. I will never stop writing. I will keep writing until I can't anymore. I won't stop. And I will continue to tell Black stories for the rest of my life. And I will continue to tell the truth. And that truth will last way beyond me. And we will continue to be able to grapple with that until not only this country, but the world lives up to its promise of humanity and recognizes the humanity of our people as central to this world story.
Um, I feel like I know the answer, but do you have a library card?
Yeah, I do. You know what? And I'm like, I'm greedy with my library card. I got multiple library cards.
I was
I'm
about
really
to, yeah.
I got a lot of them. Yes. In my neighborhood in Atlanta, in the old
Mm,
fourth ward, I have a library card here for the Vineyard Haven Library, Library of Congress. I got a library card in Johannesburg, South Africa. Okay,
yeah,
I love libraries. If you couldn't tell.
good to hear. Good to hear. Um, this has been, I don't even have the words. It has been fulfilling. Um, I have been anticipating just sort of chatting with you and asking these questions about the book, but also just to kind of get to know you. Like I've seen, you know, the social media things, and I've seen some other talks and everything. So as a person, as a podcast person, like I always try to make sure that I don't ask the exact same questions that I've seen elsewhere or heard elsewhere. And I hope I did that
Oh,
today.
this has been wonderful, and thank you so much. I appreciate, again, and I said this offline, and I'll say this on the record. What you have inaugurated with this podcast is divine, and it is so necessary in such a time as this. So I not only encourage you, I'm saying we need you to keep showing up, Marquita, keep going. These stories matter. Black archives, curators, and librarians matter in the work that you all do, so that folks like me, the scholars, we can't do our work without you all laying the foundation, and the storytelling around that is so very important. You all are a part of the long Black freedom struggle, and I'm just so happy to have had the opportunity to have come on your podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Lastly, if our listeners want to catch up with you online or learn about where you're going to be, other than the 2 talks that you've mentioned, where can they find you online?
Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or TikTok under Dr. Karida Brown. If you want the more formal version of me, LinkedIn. If you just want to know what I'm up to, Instagram. If you a little ratchet, follow me on TikTok.
I follow you on all 3, so I'm set. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marquita. I appreciate you.
For more information, you can visit us online at www.blackinthestacks.com and find us on most social media platforms at Black in the Stacks.